Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Compassion and Courage Conversations in Healthcare. I'm your host, Marcus Engel, and this is the podcast where we teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. Today, I am super excited to be with my friend Trisha Choi. Trisha, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and good to talk to you again.
Hello, Marcus. Thanks for having me.
So happy to have you. I can give your credentials and your background, but you're probably a bigger expert in you than I am. So I can tell everybody, though, that we have met a couple of times, and once at Duke Health when I was speaking there for Nurses Week a few years ago, and I think at a few other conferences around the country too. So I'm glad to be able to get to talk to you.
Yeah. And I also think that one of the things that we have I have an interest and you have, is a narrative medicine background. It's something that I explored many years ago and really highly respect that you have that as part of your background.
Yeah, and we both have the CPXP as well, the Certified Patient Experience Professional through the Barrel Institute.
Cor- Correct.
So, Tricia, you have 30 years of experience as an executive and as a patient experience professional and culture change leader, et cetera. What got you into this work in a clinical setting?
Sure. So the truth is, I was a patient, and my experience as a patient was not 100% positive. There was a day that I was having a interaction with a nurse, and I think she was having a hard day. She took her bad day out on me, and I was like, you know what? Maybe there's something that can be done. And what I decided to do after that was to volunteer in the hospital. I did over 4,000 hours of volunteer service, I believe it was, to look at maybe I should change my career and go back into becoming an occupational therapist. So I went to every area that OT was in the hospital. And then it was after that that I decided I think it's for me to become in not clinical setting, but academic setting. So I ended up becoming an assistant to the chief of rehabilitation medicine. And then from there, I went into volunteer service, and then I went into patient experience. So that was my voyage over 30 years. So from patient to volunteer to healthcare worker and executive.
Very nice, very nice. And much like me, you've got the CPXP, but neither of us are clinical. So love that.
Correct.
Yeah.
I was part of the inaugural class, actually, so that was quite an honor.
Ah, so you and I were both part of that inaugural class.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Well, tell me a little bit more about you and what you're doing now. And I know we've had a conversation or two before, but I'd love to know how your journey from being a patient at that time and the points about going through being a director for volunteers, et cetera. What did you really take away from that 4,000 hours of volunteer time that you did?
I think it was really looking at the true patient experience and what it is that I, one, valued from my caregivers, and two, also probably saw what was missing and what could be heightened in terms of the interaction between patient and caregiver. So it was a yes and a both and, and I think one of the stories that I wanted to share with you is I became a patient again, as many things happen in life. I had a bike accident and broke my radial head on my elbow, and had an opportunity to experience one of the volunteers' total kindness and caring and lack of hesitation to help out. It was the day I was being discharged, and I needed help to just balance and put on my clothing because we wear gowns in the hospital, right? And I needed help to put on my underwear. And it was the most humbling experience. But this young volunteer, came over without hesitation and helped me. And all I could do was cry hot tears of, wow, I don't know if this was part of our training here at this hospital, but this young person knew exactly what I needed, and she not only soothed my physical needs, but also emotionally was there to help me. So,
All encapsulated in an experience that probably took 30 seconds,
true.
right? You know,
Yeah.
and that's where when you talk about the nurse that you had that took her bad, I assume it was a female nurse. I think you said that took her
Yes.
bad day out on you. Um, I love culture change in organizations, but how do we change the hearts of people? And it sounded like you have a volunteer there who did not need their heart changed. They inherently knew that when you were in a vulnerable position, what you probably needed not only was someone to recognize that and act in a way that was compassionate, but also quickly, right? We don't want to belabor this and
Right.
make a person feel more uncomfortable. How do we communicate that that type of care to the nurses or the others that may be having a bad day? How do we
Yeah.
really get that? And that's where we get down to brass tacks, right?
Right. But I mean, as I don't think I would say luck, but as I would say my higher power, God would have it, I had an opportunity 10 years later as a patient experience professional to go back to that unit and encounter that very nurse and do a teaching on patient experience and kindness. And I don't know if she remembered me, but I remembered her, and nothing, no words needed to be said. It was just, this is our training and curriculum on kindness and connection with patients and how we show compassion. And it was just this beautiful moment for me.
It is. I think we talk about the narrative medicine example, and we learn from stories, right? It's how we've
Yes.
learned since the beginning of time, an oral tradition handed down, and and you've got a lot of stories because you were a patient more than once, and just being in a hospital environment, I'm sure you've witnessed many other stories. And on this podcast, I always ask the question to share about a time that someone was there for you or that you were there for another, which is the same assignment that I give my pre-meds at the beginning of every semester. And so, do you have any other stories that you'd like to share about times that you've witnessed human compassion or been the recipient of the human compassion?
Yeah, I'll have two. One I'll share when someone was there with me. So my friend, coach, change specialist, she happens also to be a massage therapist, was my hiking buddy and driver. So in between working at one hospital to another, I had a medical change for the first time in 30 years. And I was not supposed to operate heavy machinery. So she would come to my home and drive me to work and from work. And it was also during that time I was looking to see who would be my coach to prepare me for this big job as assistant vice president of patient experience. I had interviewed lots and lots of coaches, but what she said to me is, Trisha, this organization is hiring you for who you are. There's no preparation needed. So let's just go on hikes and talk about what it is about you that they saw on those 25 persons who interviewed me for the job. And she said, that's the person that we're going to work with and prepare for your, you know, new role. And that was healing. So she was there for me. She was there for me many, many times in my, you know, life at that point. And then since then, she's been such a good friend to me.
I love what you say there. We're they're hiring you for the person that you are, not your credentials necessarily, but the person for you, who you are. So a question I always love to ask leaders is, who taught you leadership?
Hmm. I would have to say every single person along the way that gave me an opportunity to work with them. So, starting from my job when I was 14, working at a dentist's office, all the way through, becoming a hostess at a New York City restaurant that was just opening, to my um, one of my bosses in patient experience, every single person who's given me an opportunity to work with them. I was also a celebrity assistant. Very humbling experience working with two different celebrities, and that taught me how to lead, even as
Yeah.
a assistant. My boss, who was the chief of rehab medicine, all of those people.
You pick up little bits along the way, right? Or
True.
maybe big bits along the way from leaders. I even go further back than that, though. I mean, you had to have a pretty solid upbringing to have the knowledge and the maturity to rise to some of these levels too.
Thank you. Yes, I definitely have to credit my family, my parents. They are, I'm a first generation Filipina American. And so to see how my mother was the breadwinner for the family, because my father did have an early accident with brain injury and went through rehab himself. So to witness that over my childhood, when I was 10 years old, that had first occurred. Definitely got to see my mother lead, and then alternately to see how my father led at home by making sure when he was better that we had all had meals to eat that were from his specific region of the Philippines, and opened up a restaurant when he was better thereafter. So to see them both lead in their own way was a definite formidable experience to me.
Did you act as a caregiver for your father?
I would say indirectly, yes. I mean, fetching his slippers and,
Mm.
helping to massage and getting water. But we were lucky enough to have someone help who was on a full time basis. And she was really the person who massaged him every single day and helped him to walk within a year while my mother was working. So, it was also another lesson in learning how to watch and someone lead and care give.
I love what you just said there. It's a lesson in learning how to watch. And in narrative medicine, I often say that I can distill down so much of my education into two words, and that's active listening. And
Mm,
whether you say it's active listening or active watching, in narrative medicine, we would say that is witnessing. Um, that's where we learn, right? When we're open
yeah.
to seeing what others are doing and how others are behaving and acting and leading, that's how we get to where the stages we are. So where are you these days? What are you doing these days?
So I've actually had a reduction in force in my last position. And so from that, I came to realize that there's something that I want to do in this world that probably hasn't really been done. We all go to conferences, but hardly during a conference do we take the time that we need for ourselves so that we could hear the morsels of really good ideas we could take back to our organizations to bring change. And so I do have a master's in change from Columbia, and I want to put that to use. And so the whole idea is having a space within conferences where someone can stop and take respite for anywhere from 5 minutes to 30 minutes, either drawing or doing some art or journaling, listening to music, stretching, dance, whatever it is that they need to do to self care, and then come back to the conference and hear something and say, now that I've taken care of myself, aside from that coffee break or that cocktail hour or that 6 a.m. yoga session, I'm now refreshed for a little bit to come back and take back some ideas because that's what I'm here to do. And I would like to invigorate my team back home with some ideas. So my company is called Bahay Kubo, which in the Philippines is a little hut that is shielding you from the heat or the rain, and it is something that is able to be picked up and brought to another part of the village. It's lightweight, so that's the whole idea.
You've sat through a million conferences, as I have, and sometimes better than others. And I know that your brain just overflows with ideas and connections, and you're constantly meeting people. I really love your idea that people can sit down and do some art at a big convention and get their brain out of work mode and into play mode, even for a little while, because then that brings us back to the work mode later, more refreshed and ready to take it on. I really like this idea of what you're doing.
Yes. So I've had a couple of smaller venues already, and I'm looking to break out into some larger events. So the company is in its infancy, but had a lot of great opportunity to get out there with the concept, and so hoping to see some of Baha'i Kubo events at some upcoming conferences and conventions.
Can you spell that for me?
Sure. Bahay, which is house or home, Bahay, and then Kubo, Kubo, which is the hut. So it's a little.
And if people want to know more about what you're doing, how can they get information on that?
Sure, it's BahaiKuboRetreat.com. And then you could go to the website and check it out. And also feel free to reach out to me at Trisha at BahaiKuboRetreat.com.
Excellent, excellent. In addition to conferences and work and things like that, where do you find respite and retreat?
Sure. So recently, I have been playing a game that my partner has created out of 30 years of his artwork. And it's this beautiful game that has images of saints, and those are the heroes of the game. And it is a game that basically takes people from sickness to health. There's a ladder that you have to beat the monster up of 20 steps. And it's a striking game that wherever we play, cafes or restaurants or even the airport, people come over and say, "What is that?" And they want to know more. And it is the concept that we just don't connect anymore, except for on our devices, our phones or our laptops, and we're always too busy to actually sit down with somebody. So we did just come from a vacation, a cruise for Spiridon's 50th birthday with his family, and people were playing with us on the cruise because people are so hungry for connection to just learn about one another, and it gives that vehicle for young and old to sit down with their loved ones. And so it's been a really great tool, like you say, to be in play mode.
And you say the concept of the game is that you move towards health?
Yes, it's from sickness to health. So he had a near death experience. It's kind of interesting. Like you, he was 19 in a car wreck where the driver fell asleep at the wheel, and he was thrown out the back of the car window and broke his neck and back and was in a coma for 9 days. And then his mother prayed for his life and said, "If you let him live, he will give his life to Christ." And so, as his story goes, he came out of the coma with no breaks found on the films on his back or neck, and was able to rehab and walk talk again, fine. And then he went to a monastery to see, like, why did you spare my life? And that was where he's ended up studying for 4 years and became a monk. And he learned how to paint, and that's where he learned how to do this art of what they call iconography.
Beautiful. You're the first person that I know who is partnered with a monk. I'm
No, he is
I'm
no
intrigued by
longer.
that. No longer practicing monk. Okay,
Correct. He
gotcha.
became a monk, and then as his story goes, he then had a family, and now we are partners after, you know, his,
Life.
yes, as his ex-wife. We were both married 16 years, but to two different wonderful people, and now have found our way to one another. So, yeah, his game is called Toll House, and it's just talking about the toll houses we have to pass on our ladder towards health, from sickness to health, and that's his concept of the game. So it can be found at Game Toll House on either Facebook or Instagram.
Okay, I'll check that out and pass that along to my game playing friends.
Yeah, it's a really great way to connect, and also to reflect, I would say.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that there was one other story that just I wanted to share with you, Marcus, from
Yeah,
my
please.
time working in healthcare before coming to. I guess it ties in what we just shared about near death experience, and also just working in hospital. But I think I was there for somebody during my last year as an executive in this academic medical center. We were hiring for a best fit manager of interpreter services, international services, and volunteer services. And one of the candidates was along for the whole interview process and came to me and said, "You know what? I wish I would have applied." And I said, "Well, why didn't you?" And she said, "Well, I just never thought I was good enough." And I said, "Well, that's not so much on you, but on your leadership and your management. So I would like to see if it's possible at this stage in the game to get you to come in and interview." And so we checked with all the leadership at the hospital and human resources, and they said it was fair as long as she went through all of the same processes of the other candidates. And lo and behold, the entire team selected her to be our manager. And at 30 days, 60 days, 90 days of her experience, she kept coming into work every single day saying, "Is it okay that I'm so excited about my job? Like, I love this job." And, you know, I knew that I knew something, a secret about her that I couldn't share, but that she was diagnosed with cancer. And that was something that, she could overcome. And she was still every single day persevering and working really hard. And I was there for her and supporting her as much as I could. And then when I left the organization due to the reduction in force, I found out maybe 6 months later that she had passed too early. But what I'd like to remember is that I was there for her, saying, "You can do this," and
Mm.
she could do this. And how many people on the team that she supported as a leader, she just brought a light to. They loved working with her.
You talked a little bit in your form about the idea of joy at 30 and 60 and 90 days on the
Yes.
job. Tell me a little bit more about that philosophy and notion.
Yeah. I think that, some of the coaches that I had searched out to work with me, both for myself personally. And then when I was working with this manager and some of the clients that I now have, because I do coach healthcare leaders as part of my business, is that it's a continual process to find yourself within the work and to find what your calling is. And not so much to perform, but to actually, as you said, find the joy in what you do every single day, and to make sure that you're hitting the goals that you set out is really making sure that you're also following what you were called to do by the organization that hired you, so that you are lockstep, with that joy and that purpose.
When you're coaching healthcare executives, what is there a common thread that you see?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that I learned is humility. So, how can you be humble in the work that you do? How can you be curious as a leader? To always look back and say, what did I not say, but I was thinking? And then how could I incorporate that into my next interaction with my, whether it's boss when you're managing up or your team if you're managing down? And how can you just continually improve as a leader?
How do you continue to improve as a leader?
I think I try to, as simple as what we've been talking about here, is to completely find joy in what I do. And that's something that I needed to be reminded of with this time off from before, being in this reduction in force and trying to find myself again. It was tough working during the pandemic on the front lines, in the emergency rooms, on the COVID units. But it was also quite an honor to be able to do that, to take our leaders into those spaces, to be with people and to say, like Jennifer said to you, I'm here. We're here with you. You are not in this alone. And there were people waiting for like hours, maybe days in the emergency room for treatment, and just to come to them versus, not just staying in the C suite, but
Mhm.
coming to them and rounding was a big part of the work that we did. And so I think that's how I continue to be a better leader myself, is to check in with myself as much as possible. What are the things that I need to do, conversations that I need to have with my partner, with my friends, with my coach, and just strengthening where I need to strengthen.
So as a leader, I don't know any leaders who do not read a lot. What are you currently reading?
So I had the opportunity to be a guest on a different podcast, and I really loved the book Love as a Business Strategy. And it's one of the things that I'm still reading. I'm also part of a book club with people in the healthcare industry, and we're about to read, I think it's called Love as Miracles. Marian Williamson. What is the name of that book?
A Course in
A
Miracles?
Course in Miracles, but it's
Yes.
going to be a year-long book club, and so that's why I couldn't remember the title, because we're just about to embark on reading that book together, and we're going to give it a deep dive over a full year, and we're going to do A Course in Miracles.
Awesome. Awesome. I read it. It's probably been 4 or 5 years ago now, but it is a deep dive of a book, and it'll change you. It'll change you.
Yeah. I mean, and then I always find myself talking with strangers that are now friends about the Four Agreements by Don
Mm.
Miguel Ruiz. So it's something that I've read many times, but I find myself quoting all the time those simple Four Agreements.
Always do your best. Be impeccable in your speech.
don't make assumptions, and
Don't make
don't
assumptions
take anything personally, which is the
personally.
hardest.
Isn't it though? And that shows our humanity right there.
It sure does.
Yeah. So if you had the ability to have the world's tallest billboard on top of the world's largest mountain, what is the message that you would want to broadcast to humanity?
I think it's something that I've learned through my uncle a long time ago when he's taught me to forgive myself. So I think my partner and I talk about it all the time. But if there's just one word that guides my life, it's to forgive. Forgive
Yeah.
myself and forgive others. And that's the ultimate humility, right? Because it's saying, I'm not perfect. I think I just said it today.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
perfect, and that's okay. And I know that I was made in the image and likeness of a higher being of God. And I am not made to be God, so I just have to strive. But along with that is kindness.
Kind of go together hand in hand, don't they?
True, yes.
Kindness to self and others, and forgiveness. I always I get the question about forgiveness a lot due to the fact that this trauma that left me blind
Yeah.
was a criminal act. Um, forgiveness is a concept that I've always found to be very slippery, because one can say I forgive, but if you haven't really done it in your heart, you haven't really forgiven, right? You can say the words, you can do the perfunctory um, explanations, I suppose, but it's harder to really get in there and to let those things go. And do you have a definition of forgiveness that you go by?
Wow, this is an interesting concept because I just had this conversation over vacation with my family. And so we were talking about how someone asked for forgiveness after 37 years. And the family member said, I really had to stop for at least a minute or two and think if I was ready to forgive, because that meant if I was going to forgive, there's no way I could ever bring this back up against that person again. And I had to truly forgive in my heart. It was this beautiful moment where she was sharing this story and she forgave, and they had a moment of kind of hugging one way or, you know, to try to put closure on the forgiveness. But anytime after that, that anybody spoke about this person, they said, she'd say, I can't. I already forgave them. And so that's come up several times in the past couple of days where, hey, I thought you forgave me for that already. You can't bring that up again. And that is an interesting concept in my practice too. I practiced the 12 steps of recovery, and forgiveness
Mhm.
is on the top of those. It's on, you know, I, it's the ninth step, and it's also the 10th step of daily practicing that, please forgive me and I forgive you.
Mhm. Are you in recovery yourself?
Yeah, it's part of my story. So there's a lot of things that I guess I haven't shared. I just reached the 12-year mark on
Congratulations.
this week. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yes. And so that has been a big part of my practice. And it's also something that just guides where I am now with my spirituality and discovery.
My freshman year of college, in a Religion 101 class, I was tasked with going to an open AA meeting and and seeing how it would relate to a religious gathering.
Hmm.
And it was my first concept really in this idea that this is a spiritual walk. This is not just a physical walk for those who are in recovery, but it is a spiritual walk as well. I'm glad to know you found peace in the 12 steps and continue to thrive.
Thank you. Yes. And you know what? I think as everybody should in the medical profession attend one of your courses and hear you speak, they should also be given the opportunity to go to a AA or 12 step program.
Mhm.
So I have here in North Carolina have had people come in droves to some of the meetings and sit down and learn. And I think it just offers a different perspective. And I mean, even for you, as you share about your forgiveness and what happened to you in this criminal act, I would say that's also, I'm curious to know how that was for you to sit in that room.
It was, I have an amazing amount of respect for anybody who goes into recovery because I know that it takes an incredible amount of humility to admit that something is wrong and I have to do something to make this right. And when it's got as deep as a hold of you as substances can, um, that takes a lot of courage and a lot of heart and a lot of guts. So I've ever since that meeting, I have had an immense amount of respect for those who go into recovery. For me, I guess when the forgiveness question comes up, I always kind of think that forgiveness ultimately is a bit of a selfish choice, but it's
Mm,
also a choice of self love.
yeah.
Because if I hate someone, does it really hurt them? It does not. It hurts me. And
Yeah.
so if I am forgiving, then I am releasing myself from that emotion,
Yeah.
from that tie.
You know,
And ultimately,
um,
that's where I want to go. Yeah.
that's pretty profound.
It's what I've learned after 30 some odd years of wrestling with my own self.
Yeah. And that's only part of the story. So, very briefly, um, my recovery was just part of my health. So, I
Mm,
choose to call what I have is a mental wellness diagnosis, which is what I decided to do at my last organization. We were in the middle of the pandemic. I had a lot of team members going through something, and I decided to share my mental wellness diagnosis. And so I shared with you before that this friend of mine who helped me with my medication change after 30 years was switching from lithium for bipolar disorder to a new medication. And that was right before working in my last job. And so at some point in my last job, I decided this is something I wanted to share because I'm a leader in healthcare,
mm,
and I want to share that as a leader, part of knowing is knowing yourself and knowing how to be healthy. So that part of my story is recovery. Part of my story is also knowing how to be as mentally healthy as I can so that I could lead a team of 108 departments and show up every day. And then since then, due to the fact that I had lost my job, I was able to have clarity to see that I was in a relationship before this one that didn't serve me, and was able to, with the help of my friend Sarah, again, also get out of a relationship and end the cycle of domestic violence in my lifetime. So all of these things are so important to lead to my leadership, to how I coach, to how I am. And I think it's all about having compassion for myself, right? And
mm.
forgiveness.
Yeah.
But it was the hardest for me to forgive myself. I forgave the other person's quickly or more quickly than I did myself.
That's kind of standard, right? I think for intelligent and high functioning people, that's probably pretty par for the course. It's easier to forgive the other than it is ourselves. But I like the person you are. I'm glad that you are with us and thriving and healthy. And I can't thank you enough for being with me on the podcast today. Is there anything else that you'd like to put out to the world? Any other organizations you'd like to support, et cetera?
No, but if I had a second billboard, it would definitely say that you are a miracle, Marcus. And
Mm.
I'm so grateful for you, for having you share this time with me today.
Likewise, that's a two-way street. I wasn't totally sure what we were going to talk about today. We covered a lot of ground, and I'm glad we got into some concepts that ultimately people wrestle with. So thank you for a very rich conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah. And listeners, thank you for being part of this episode of Compassion and Courage. This is the podcast where we teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. Please visit marcusengel.com for keynote speaking desires, healthcare consulting, books, etc. Thank you all again so much for being with me on this episode of Compassion and Courage.